welcome to Founders Marketing Compass. My name is Etgar Shpivak. With my experience as a co-founder and as a marketer, I'm interviewing founders and investors to learn how to build healthy, lasting relationships between startup founders and their marketing team. Today, I'm hosting Maya Szutan, a partner in Lool Ventures. Hi, Maya.
Hi, Edgar. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for taking time and having this podcast with me.
I'm happy to. It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
I will start and I will ask you if you can tell me and the audience a bit about yourself.
Lool Ventures, first of all, is an early stage. Oh, good. It's an early stage venture fund based out of Tel Aviv. We have about 200 million under management, about 40 portfolio companies, and are investing out of our third fund. Our check size is between 1 to 3. We lead rounds of pre-seed and seed in various sizes. A quick background about myself. I born in Israel, grew up in Singapore, competed in Youth World Championship horseback riding, served in special forces in the Army, and then started my own low-tech business in my hometown. And then went into school, did corporate real estate M&As, corporate finance, consulting, and then went into VC. It was my first time with a little team. I was all about operating and building and knowing everything about, bringing the flair of execution. I had no idea what tech was. And I can say that I found my passion. I was a principal on the team for 3.5 years, and then I transitioned to the operating side, kind of bring stripes on my belt for myself, as you say. I joined Hi Bob to lead the business development and U.S. market launch, and doing everything from adapting the product from the UK market to America. First sales on the ground, first hires on the ground, strategic partnerships, product partnerships. I then joined Venn. Venn, if you know them, they're a residential management system company. Pretty big, started from full holding the internal supply chain of the living experience, if you will. And today they're servicing multifamily customers in America. Very big. I was their VP operations and VP of corporate development for about 3 years. And we raised a significant amount of more than $80 million together and led the transition from a consumer facing residential experience to a B2B SaaS platform, and the company's doing amazing. And then the past 2 years up to rejoining Lool, I was a chief operating officer of Exco, aka Playbuzz, also leading the transition from media revenue company to technology usage-based SaaS, and the company is also doing very well once completed that transition. And then a year ago, when interest rates started going up, and I found the Lool partners and myself, we've been in really good touch all along the years. We found a unique opportunity in time for me to come back to the team, come back home, and I'm very excited. Been on the team for about a year. We're, as I said, we're investing in our third fund. I've led 2 investments to date, which I'm very proud of, very happy about. One's undisclosed yet, and we're still looking for stellar founders to work with.
So founders, go talk to Maya. Jumping straight into our questions, and in your opinion and in your perspective as a VC, what's make a startup's marketing team successful?
I think a marketing team at the end of the day has this multifaceted role. First of all, it's very attached to the company's brand and brand building. It's voicing the company's, values out there to the market, but also receiving feedback back, being able to read the market, read the competitors, and understand where is the company positioned and where should it strategically be aiming in the current landscape. So I would say it's having like one eye very focused on who you are as a company, who the company is, and one eye on where does that company fit into the entire market story, and having like one eye looking at the landscape all the time and making sure that the positioning is where the company wants to be. And I will say that I think it's one of the only teams in the company that would always need to look 2 steps ahead, kind of paving the way for what the company wants to be in the near and farther future, and finding the right balance between finding product market fit, but also conveying the bigger vision of who the company wants to be.
So I'm talking with founders a lot about their team KPI. And what I have seen in many cases is that we see that in one hand, the marketing team achieved their KPI. In the other hand, on the VC perspective, the company need to grow much more revenue, more clients. How do you see this conjunction as a VC?
So I believe there's a premature question that needs to be asked. And what is a company trying to achieve with its voice out there? Is it trying to, everyone wants always to achieve more revenue and more growth and more signals and everybody to see the numbers and be happy. But at the end of the day, there's a premature question that founders need to be constantly asking themselves, what is the company catering for at this point in time? Is it trying to achieve educating and bringing awareness through marketing to the problem that it's trying to solve, or to the solution within a very well-known problem? And I think it's a very important question, specifically when you're handling earlier stage companies where, at my operator days, we would always be consumed in this idea that we are in our problem and we're sure that everybody knows about the problems that we're trying to solve for with our product. But the reality is that most of the times there's a lot to be done in educating the market about the problem that you want to solve for, because you're innovating and companies are not always out to seek what kind of new products and innovations are out there. And sometimes you need to prematurely, even join forces with levering other competitors' marketing voices to bring the importance of a given problem to the market. And only then, once the market the problem is very evident, market the company's product on its own. I think it's the KPIs are, at the end of the day, lagging indicators, right? You want to know that you're performing on the goals that you're set out to accomplish, and answering whether it is you're trying to educate for a problem or for your product within a given problem is very important. And the levers that you'll pull on marketing execution and operations are very different in each cases. For example, if you're trying to educate for a given problem in a market that is not very clear yet, you would run significantly more thought leadership, tone of voice that in a way even complements your competition, just to bring bigger awareness to the market as a whole, going more on stages, doing far more educational sessions rather than voicing your own brand's value proposition. And I think in that instance, you get to enjoy really two things. One, you are the thought leader of a new and upcoming space, and you're kind of putting the flag there, or this is my territory. And also you're bringing more attention to new value and new standards that are out there in the market.
Do you find yourself within those like KPI dilemma? Because I know founders are struggling with this, especially founders that are not coming from this marketing perspective. Do you find yourself working like in your board meeting with the founders on the very specific KPI? Hey, let's aim together for the next quarter to achieve this and this?
It really begs the question of what stage the company's at. I think at the end of the day, if you're trying to drive your own brand within an existing ecosystem, it's much easier to tag that KPI to be able to know, what's the customer acquisition cost? How much does it cost you to bring in an ICP qualified lead of, let's say, an enterprise software company? It's much more measurable rather than just creating a general sense of awareness to your problem. And there it becomes trickier because marketing attribution, as we all know, is a very hard nut to crack. So I don't
very
think
hard up to not exist today.
Yeah. I think it's it's tricky because there's also, and I think it would also be a nice discussion around the relationship between marketing and sales, because if you do your brand building and kind of customer acquisition top of funnel in a very precise and good way, if you optimize for volume, you'll pay for it in conversion. If you optimize for precision on ICP, you might miss customers that don't put out their need at a given point in time, but might actually buy your product, and then you're too narrowing your funnel. Whereas if you have sales and marketing working well together and they complement each other, you need to find that right balance between how much wide you spread your funnel, how much, let's call it, oil do you put on the fire to bring a wider audience and really stress out the boundaries of your ideal customer profile, the kind that you're, bringing into the funnel, and see how it plays out with conversion into actual sales deals at the end. And I think it's a constant trial and error because markets change very quickly. Companies and products change very quickly. And also the company's brand and tone of voice of how you market your product should also change, like ever evolving. There isn't something that, this is my marketing, this is my narrative, this is my messaging, and now I'm going to run with it for 3 years. It's a living, breathing animal because it speaks to the market that is living and breathing.
So talking about those marketing allocation and talking in ballpark numbers, let's say one for seed, one for stage A, and maybe for the B one, but let's focus on the seed and the A company. When you're evaluating startups, it might be for your portfolio company or for new investment. What marketing budget allocation would raise a red flag for you? Is there a specific threshold, as a ballpark that you say, this is too much, this is too little?
Yeah, I think it's in percentages. If more than 20% of the company's budget is going on marketing at a seed stage, it's way too much. There's a very close-knit, low-hanging fruit circle that you want to engage with and discover. And it's usually lower friction at that point in time, very founder-led. And if you're finding yourself needing to spend immense amount of marketing budgets on this stage, I think it begs the question of why is that required? You don't want to be fueling sales at such an early stage. I do like with marketing. But I think it also begs the question of how do you define marketing budget?
Yes.
What comes in there? Conferences, are they a part of marketing? Are they a part of biz dev? Are they sales? Is it purely, ads and paid acquisition? Is it writing posts and thought leadership? Is it LinkedIn management? It really, it's become more fluid than it used to be because I think paid resources are very different today than what they used to be, and outbound is very hard to do. So you need to find creative ways to feed the beast, if you know what I mean.
And if I will ask, this is definitely, a great question, of what come into the marketing budget, does the CMO count as a marketing budget? This is like a huge question.
Yeah.
But if you say like this ballpark, and thank you for that. What is the ballpark that you see for the later stage, for the A, for the B companies?
So I think later stage is much more open and wide and very dependent on the type of the business. If it's a consumer SMB, most of the budget will be marketing focused. If it's an enterprise company, a lot of the spend would go to drive enterprise deals and enable. So you'll see more conferences, more travel, more hand-holding in driving both marketing and sales, and a lot of focus on brand rather than lead acquisition. It really differs. My general notion around putting corporate overhead costs on budgets that are individual is 100% do that. Make the corporate overhead as lean as possible, so you are able to see as management the clearest picture of how much muscle you're pulling in a given direction and how much you're getting back. So definitely C-level salaries should sit on the marketing budget. Same for sales.
And if we talk about this CMO, there is a big trend for startups hiring a fractional CMO. And happy to understand your position about should you hire this very experienced CMO versus hiring this fractional CMO? Do you look at on like a seed A question, seed A, B question on a function of the company ARR? When do you think, this company, need to hire this fractional? Maybe they don't. Maybe some investors in this podcast already said, go hire this, guy who will know how to do everything. And you don't need the CMO, even this fractional CMO. Some say you do need this fractional CMO, like at your seed stage, when to hire this full-time CMO, this expensive CMO. What is your take on that?
So I'll say this, that in earlier stages, it's one of the hardest hires that you can find, especially in our ecosystem in Israel. Marketing executives, everybody wants the perfect generalist round around the corners. It can do both brand, paid user acquisition, conferences, put you on stages, run PR. It's a multifaceted position that to be good at all of these is very, very hard. At earlier stages, you'd usually want someone that's very hands-on, but someone that's had all this proven capabilities would usually not come to run the LinkedIn ads on its own. They're expecting to build a team. So it's just kind of a rabbit hole that you're going down. And I think it begs the question of what do you want to prioritize at first. I think if we go back to the first answer I gave you around what is the company trying to cater for, if the problem is clear and you're just trying to build your brand because the market is very evident, it's a clear position to hire for. You know what you want to be doing, and it's not, I wouldn't go by ARR, I would go by market fit. So if you have the velocity in the sales and you know that your sales muscle is kind of built and you know who your ICP is and you want this, now you've exhausted your first cycle of low-hanging fruits, I would say totally go for it and create that, let's call it sharper incline in inbound attraction to your business and grow sales with that. If it's still in discovery mode, let's say you're going after a very fresh green market, you're changing something in the industry, your ACV might be very big, so you have less companies, less customers, and relatively large ARR. I think you can gain some more traction. You can even cross the 3, 5, even 6 ARR before you go and hire a full-blown CMO. And if you're in Israel, it's also a big question around where do you want them to sit? Where does management sit? Does it sit in Israel? Does it sit in America? Does it sit in Europe? Depending on your market. Do you want an in-market persona that can speak the lingo and understand the nuances? Or is it more of a paid consumer-oriented company that this can be managed from remote positions, remote from market, that is? So I think there's a lot of questions to be asked, but I think founders need to hold on to understanding this marketing beast pretty well before they put the chimp on someone else's shoulders, if you will.
I will follow up these questions because what I have seen from my work as a consultant, from living in this very incredible and supporting startup community in Israel, is that in many cases I have seen that there is a founder who is a genius. He can be a tech genius, or he can be a very problem-solving genius, and he understands his landscape in real estate, in healthcare, in medical, in a lot of segments. He understands the problem 100%, or the tech perspective, if you take AI companies, but they fail to understand even those basics that we discuss on. They fail to do it. And in one hand, they don't have like this budget to hire this CMO. And, there is a gap in their understanding. They hire, an agency, and they tell them, bring me leads. I don't care, do outreach, do LinkedIn ads. I want leads. And they fail to understand
the ins and
why
outs.
they need this soft leadership and what are the actions, why I need to go and to travel to this conference and to spend, a week on preparing and doing this soft leadership. Because they're not there. Sorry.
Yeah.
How do you, as the VC that wrote the check, handle this type of situation?
So I think my 2 cents to founders on this before I touch on the investor side of things is get whatever education you need to know every part of your business pretty well. There's this saying, go out and do the job before you hire someone for it. I don't know if you need to do it to that extent, but definitely get some education. So if it's a fractional CMO, if it's an advisor that knows the ins and outs of marketing and can walk you through what levers you can pull on at every stage of the company, I think it's very important. Just make sure that it's someone that actually walks the walk and not only talks the talk. And as an investor, there's a fine line between At the end of the day, it's the founder's yellow brick road that they need to go through building out their company. I can give my 2 cents if I were them. And at the end of the day, let's call it the company's measured on results. So I think it needs to be handled with handled with care. You want to know that the company that you've invested in is gaining the right clout in the market, that they're bringing the right tone of voice of the brand out there. Their positioning is very clear. And I think at the end of the day, it needs to be measured by customers, by engagement with your brand and your business. Because I can have a great opinion. We're all very opinionated people on the investor side, but the company really needs to be speaking to its customers, not to its investors. So I tend to handle that area with a grain of salt. And sometimes founders need to, learn their own way. If it's faster, or slower, if it's failing 3 times and attempting to bring their company's marketing operations to where they want to be. And sometimes, you get out the first shot.
So let's go even dive deeper and try to understand, again, from your point of view, about this very big discussion. I assume for later stages, those A and B companies, the dilemma between an in-house marketing team to outsource it to an agency.
Yeah. So also when you outsource, we have a fractional CMO, you have individuals that can advise on multiple startups and have very high proficiency. Usually I'd opt for these kind in the earlier stages. At the end of the day, an agency has employees, has offices, has their own corporate overhead, and they need the volume, and they're not fully attended to you, while consultants can, come in to do a project. They're very minded to your needs, and usually they're catering for less customers on their side, less companies that they're advising. I would definitely, on the earlier stages, not bring it full-time in-house. It's a very big commitment. And if you find out that you hired the wrong skill set or optimized for the wrong needs for your company, it's a very long cycle to change that. So the cost of the mistake is very high. And also going back to you need to feel, you need to be investing your own founder time and understanding what are those levers that you're pulling and what's coming out on the other side. What kind of value are you able to drive with the trial and error? If it's brand building, if it's thought leadership, what's the impact of that in the grand scheme of things in driving business? And once you have better grasp on those levers in every stage of the company, it's easier for you to know as a founder also what kind of a persona, a leader, do you want to add to the company and want to bring them in.
I will follow up on this because I have a lot of friends. They came from the marketing a lot and lots of friends from agencies that their struggle is actually the opposite way. They're working with startups, the startup doing very, very well, and they're going and their budget increase and they're making more money from the startup. And then when they're making a lot of money, then the startup go and take it in-house, and then they lose everything because there is a real dilemma for the good agencies.
Mm-hmm.
Because if they won't work well, then they will remain on the same budget. But if it will work too good, then we lose this client.
I think it's a natural evolution. Being an outsourced agency and expecting to serve a growth stage startup forever is just, I think, is unrealistic expectation. It's like, if you have a SMB product and you have amazing customers and your customers are growing, at some point they won't be an SMB anymore and they'll churn and use a bigger, a more enterprise oriented product. I think it's a natural evolution. And as an agency, not that I've been there, I think it's very natural to be seeding newer companies all the time and understand that there's an evolution, even to the extent of hugging that change and that evolution, meaning being in touch with good CMOs and potentially partnering with them along the years, because also roles change and even if I hired a CMO and they're doing a great job, let's say 2 people on the team left and you need someone to come in, someone who knows the company to come in and fill in the gaps. If you maintain a good relationship and you can regain opportunities to work again in different capacities with your customers.
So what's your take on, if we talk about this marketing team, on the compensation structure for marketing team? Because unlike other, what's your take on the compensation for marketing team and the way to structure it? Because we're living in the landscape that the CMO and the marketing team hires normally tend to be the shortest one in the company, shorter than the CFO, the finance, and the tech and the product in one hand. And how do you see this perspective in their stock, in their option pool, in their salary relatively to other salaries? How do you see it changing between those, like a seed to A companies?
So I think the stage of the company is one. The other is how critical is the marketing team to the business success, and how proven that case would be. So in an instance where marketing is key and a very evident, so a function that you cannot do without, they'd be largely compensated not very far from any other team. If it's a CS or sales is more tricky because the ratio between success-based compensation and base compensation is very clear most times. But I would definitely tie in a significant portion of the compensation to results and to, bringing sales and marketing working together in a cross-functional team, optimizing for the same kind of goal, and kind of taking away some of the friction and the attribution of leads and who brought them in and who's, I would rather have double quota recognition for marketing and sales team and compensate both and gain more momentum on the business rather than have them very separate and loosely coupled.
So going to our three last questions.
Yeah.
And going for, if you have to choose one mistake that you're still constantly repeating that founders are doing when working with their marketing team, what would it be?
It's the expectation of someone coming in and taking away all this, let's call it all this pain. It's not something that you can distance yourself from. Marketing your company, its face, the brand, is something that as a founder, as a CEO, COO, even technical executive positions like product and R&D, is something that you constantly need to be involved with, touch upon, be opinionated on, and being really in the weeds of what's going on. It's not like, oh, I gave this headache of marketing to someone else, now you go and drive thought leadership. No, you're the subject matter expert. You founded the company. You know the space better than anyone else. So there's someone that's going to be a professional team and leader to help you figure out what's the best way and what's the best, actions to take to drive your marketing to the best places possible. But you are going to be very involved in that. That means time allocation. That means spending time with those teams and really making sure that the communication in any channel possible that's coming out of the company is really in sync with everything that's going on, whether it's your vision, it's your product, and the way it is currently, it's in the way that you're intending for it to be in the future. It's not going to have less time on your calendar. It might even be more. But I think the change that you will expect and can expect is that the output and the impact on the business would be much more significant.
I really love this answer, and I will say it's really connected to, we hosted in this podcast Paul Kintagon, which is a founder, and he also serves as the CMO for Outbrain and Beeswax, very large enterprises. And he said, especially in the early days, my role is to make sure that the founder will be on the right stage at the right time with the right message. So for two last questions which are more personal to you, Maya, what would it be if you could give your younger self one advice at the beginning of your journey?
I think it's really about allowing myself more room to make mistakes, being more patient with those mistakes, and also setting the expectations with my colleagues, with my teams, both as a manager and as a counterpart. So it's knowing that you're going to have a hypothesis for some kind of idea, project, something that you want to run in the company, and you might hit it on the first one. Most likely, it's going to take 2 or 3 before you really are successful at what you've set out to do, and that needs to be as part of the expectation setting. And I think this patience really allows for, on one hand, failing successfully in those attempts, And on the other hand, really exhausting opportunities to their fullest and actually winning on good surprises that can come along.
And for the last question, which question did I needed to ask, but I didn't?
Well, you didn't ask about the future. I think we're living in very interesting times where a lot of the know-hows that we've come to realize up till now in the way that we built companies and a lot of the assumptions that we've seen come and happen along the years are changing. And I think the key trait that you should equip your backpack with as you're going through your journey ahead is flexibility and creativity and problem solving. Because the reality is changing very fast, both for us investors, for startup founders, and also for executives in later stages. And maintaining flexibility is, I think, one of the most crucial keys to success in the years that we're going to be living in the near future.
Maya, I had a great time, and I'm sure that all the listeners will provide a lot of value from this conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Edgar. It was a pleasure.